So, welcome back to the life of Tash Mia. As always, I'm Tash. We've had a bit of a break with podcasts since the first series was launched last year, and I'm finally back. And before we dive into the first episode, I wanted to give just a little bit of a life update of where I am and where I have been. This season is going to be amazing. Still going to have really amazing guests on, and I'm going to be interviewing them and sharing some more stories, but I also want to keep it real and let you kind of know what is happening in the life of Tashmia, because that's why I started this podcast. So I guess last year for me, 2023, was really a transformative year. To take it back to probably 2020, my mother, who I was extremely close to, unfortunately got diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer, and within a year, she had passed. She was really my rock in this world. She lived across the road from me. She co-raised my daughter with me. So it really shook me to my core. And I kind of spent the next few years doing everything I could to not deal with it, or then deal with it in very unhealthy ways. I was definitely engaged in bad behaviors. I was in inappropriate friendships. I was overworking. I was just burning myself out. I was letting my energy just be drained out of me in abundance. And I guess it all kind of amalgamated last year, almost like a year ago, I think, to the date, where I ended up in hospital because my body was just basically giving up on me. And I realized I needed to kind of address what was going on and take a hold of my healing and my journey. And it didn't happen overnight. It took many, many months. It also took me to have quite a big break from professionally doming last year for some of my time. But I have come back stronger than ever. I have set up a new studio and dungeon space. As many of you know, I launched my first online course. I've been training more DOMs, pro DOMs, or just ones in their personal life, which I am loving. I'm working on my first product. I'm going to be recording some more courses, and we're relaunching the podcast so that it can be a weekly thing. And I'm really happy and excited to be sharing it with you, because I am so passionate about what I do and trying to share it with everyone. So with that being said, I'm going to get into the first solo episode. And this is the one that I asked on Instagram what topic you wanted to hear about. And this one won out by a long shot. I think it was like 70% of people wanted this one. And it was the topic, what's it like to date and marry a Dom? So obviously I'll be coming at this from my own experience, because that's the one I've got. And so I'm going to talk a bit about that. I'm going to give my top 10 tips on dating a Dom. And then at the end, I'm going to answer some questions that people asked me on Instagram. So once we had decided on this topic, I said, what do you want to know? And I asked some questions. So I'm going to answer some of those at the end. So let's go back. Bit of a background to my dating life, I guess, is to how we get to where we are today. For most of my life, until I'd say my mid-20s, I didn't really know anything different from like dating people, girlfriend, boyfriend, 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 girlfriend, girlfriend, that kind of situation where you were monogamous. And I guess I just fell into that because I didn't really know anything different. And so I don't think it was really until I got into my 20s, maybe a little bit before, and I was kind of starting to explore a bit of the kink scene, a bit of the swinging scene, and I was kind of realizing like something's just not really sitting right with me in my relationships. However, it's strange because I don't identify as a monogamous practicing person, but I never believed in cheating. This is a really big thing for me in my past relationships, where I didn't believe in monogamy. I would never cheat on a partner. It was so against who I was and my ethics, I guess, and my values, really core values of who I was. So I knew there was some kind of misalignment with like how I felt inside and kind of this expectation of like monogamous dating. So I guess I then embarked on my journey from kind of like monogamy to what I'd call open slash poly beliefs. So I did actually meet my daughter's father in quite a kinky fashion, although I won't say that because it might embarrass him. But I started dating him in my 20s. He knew my kinky side of me. We explored that together. But as probably lots of parents know, you become a parent and that kind of your life kind of gets squashed for a little bit, not for too long, but it does take a bit of a backseat. Anyway, so the relationship with my daughter's dad ended. Luckily for me, it was quite amicable and we get along really well now. But I returned to dating life, and this was kind of my opportunity to date how I wanted to date. And I kind of got followed by a series of disasters, really, and finding out what was working, what wasn't working. And I guess for me, I'm very upfront about like who I am and kind of what I want and things. So when I would go on dates with people, within the first like 15 minutes, I'd probably tell them, I don't believe in monogamy. This is my lifestyle. I'm into kink. At the time, I was just getting into being a dominatrix, and I would just like let it all fall out. Maybe it was, looking back, a little bit too soon, too quick. But my kind of thought on it was, well, it's better that they know up front, because if it's not for them, and it's fine if it's not for you, I always say that, it's best that they know then, because I knew at that point I wasn't going to change. I kind of was experimenting with, okay, well, what do I want? I knew I didn't want to be monogamous. I knew I had poly beliefs, but I didn't really know how that fit into a relationship that I was going to be having with someone yet. So there was a lot of trial and error for the first part. There was also a lot of trial and error with who I was dating. I kind of got two responses when I would be upfront with people about my lifestyle. The first response was like they'd run for the hills, which to me was fine. Like, if it's not for you and you know it, like, thank you for not wasting my time. Or second, what I used to get a lot was that they were fascinated by me, almost like a zoo animal, I would say. Or that I was like, oh my God, you're my dream girl, because I can basically, I've got like free will to cheat. And which anyone who's in open or ethical non-monogamous relationships, that's not what it's about at all. So I kind of struggled finding my feet, finding the right partners. And I did have a few years of just like dating disasters. And generally how the pattern would go, I would meet someone, and if they were interested, they would want to, interested to explore my lifestyle. And then we kind of get to month 3, 4, and they would start kind of freaking out. It was just getting a little bit too much for them, and they couldn't deal with it. And I guess that's where I really learned that you can't be on this journey for someone else. You have to be on this journey for you. So meeting someone and them liking me and like wanting to come on this journey for me is it's never going to work. It's going to be in disaster. So I realized I really needed to meet someone who was on the journey for them. And it was kind of coincidentally around this time, as I said, I was already studying being a dominatrix, that I met my now husband. So when I met him, I was actually, I guess, towards the tail end of one of these dating disasters. I'd been seeing someone for like 3, 4 months. I kind of probably thrown them into the deep end of the lifestyle, and they were kind of having a bit of an adverse reaction, I guess. And then I went away on holidays, and I was staying at like an Airbnb with some of my best friends. And we had a common, so my best friend and his best friend knew each other, and that he came over one night, and I just remember like he walked through the door and I was like, get me some of that. So we met. I made up a game called Anal Jenga. which is the best way to break the ice with someone. And we kind of just ended up making out and getting it on with each other that night. And it was kind of like a holiday fling, I guess. And he came back the next night, but I was going back to Sydney. I was going back to my life here. He was living up north at the time, and he was from overseas, so I kind of just put him down to like a German backpacker. And I came back and recommenced my life as we know it. And I guess so when we started dating, that's when I got my first own dungeon by myself. And so that's just what I did. And he understood that's what I did. And he never really had a problem with it, maybe because he's from Berlin. He's very open-minded. And he was also already in an open lifestyle and open mindset mentality. And even though we both started the relationship no way even thinking we would end up married, I mean, we used to go around telling people like we were just boning. So I don't think he probably gave it as much consideration because I was just like some girl in Sydney. And for me, he was just some German backpacker I was having fun with. But as it always goes, when you don't expect it, that's when it happens. And we started seeing more and more of each other. And so I guess he always knew what I did, as I said, but it was probably a bit later on he actually understood the specifics of what I do, as in like the activities, how I deal with clients. And we had to come up with our own boundaries. And we didn't just have to do this in my work life, but we also had to do this in our personal life because we are in an open relationship. So I guess it's a little bit easier because we already had the communication around the topics. We already had the language. We already had the skills to kind of deal with these types of, what some people would perceive as intense discussions. And I mean, the biggest rule for us and my work was there's no penetrative sex. Of me, obviously I do it to other people, but there is not the sexual acts on myself. And that is something that traditionally dominatrixes don't provide anyway. So it wasn't very hard to provide. And also he realizes that there's a line between my professional life and my personal life. But, moving on to like dating a dom, I think it's interesting to people to understand that, with him, I'm not, Mistress Tash Mia. I'm just me at home, and I need someone who's going to take care of me. I need someone who's going to hold that space for me because of what I do. It is very intense. There is a lot of energy. There's a lot of connections. And so when I come home, I need someone who can just like hold space for me and let me just kind of be and be held. So I think that's a really lucky thing I found in my husband, is someone who is strong enough to hold me. And believe me, that's not easy, especially the last few years. But it's been really beautiful. So, fast forward a few years, we've been dating. Literally after we met, I think maybe 2 weeks after we met, my mum was diagnosed. So he stepped right into the hardest part of my life after we met, and he stuck around and we dated and he supported me, as I said, in every way you could. And then last year, I think it was August, we got married. Now, we don't have a very traditional marriage, I guess. We are open. What that looks like to us changes depending on what's happening with us, like personally, work-wise, whatever's happening. It always impacts the relationship. We check in with each other all the time. We love to play together with each other, with other people. And so we're always checking in what that looks like for us. We are not currently what I would say is poly, which is where you have multiple emotional relationships running at the same time, because for me, at least, and what I've witnessed in the open relationship space, is that it takes a really long time to get to poly, like years. And you have to be so in tune and confident within yourself and within your relationship. And I'm not saying that that's not where we are, but I just think it's quite a big step, and you break big steps up into little steps. So, we might end there one day, but that's not what we are right now. I would say we're ethical, non-monogamous. So that's my dating life and what it was like to get to marry a dom. I wanted to go into my top 10 dating a pro-dom tips because I think that is what people will find most helpful. So tip number 1, what is sex to you? This is an interesting one because what the word sex actually means to each person can vary. Is sex penetration? Now, as I said, a pro-dom traditionally doesn't have intercourse. They will still be, let's say, handling other people's bodies and all areas. So you need to understand your own boundaries around that, because if your partner is a professional dominatrix, you need to understand what they're doing and what you're comfortable with. Secondly, you need to think about, is sex exclusive for you? So even though, as I said, there's no penetration generally or traditionally for the dominant, you may have a hard time accepting the job if you are an extremely monogamous person, I would say, because you think that maybe that bond should only exist between you and your partner. So I would kind of think about that side of things, like, is sex and the sexual energy, is that just meant for you and your partner? Because bringing in clients and submissives, it's going to get shared around. Third, are you okay with your partner using their sexual energy towards others? So while not all sessions are sexual in nature, doms will often draw from their own sexuality and energy to assert their dominance and leadership. I certainly do this. I definitely draw upon my sexual energy. I believe that sexual energy is one of the most powerful energies that we have. And tapping into it there's so much power from that. And there's so much power in my sessions when I can tap into that. So if you're dating someone who is a professional dominatrix, you need to be comfortable with the fact that they're going to be tapping into their sexual energy and using it towards their sessions, towards clients, towards submissives. Number 4, can you handle your partner connecting with other people on deep levels? So I kind of view pro-doms as bodywork therapists almost. We are connecting and dealing with people's stuff, trauma, goals, whatever it is, but we're connecting with people on a pretty deep level. And if you're not someone who's comfortable with your partner making those deep bonds and connections, you're, again, probably going to have struggle dating a dom. Number 5, will you want to know all the details? Look, of course, I anonymously, from time to time, will discuss my work with my partner. It's only natural. But, mostly when I come home, he doesn't ask. He might say, like, was it a good day, or like good sessions? And I'll be like, yeah, it was good, and like chit chat. But this is mostly important because, this is very important because what I have with a client is between us. It's a relationship that exists between me and that particular client. And every relationship between me and a client or submissive is unique, and it exists within itself, if that makes sense. So I don't really want to have to rehash when I get home to my partner what the session was, or try and explain or convey that particular connection. It would be, 1, very difficult, and 2, exhausting. Number 6, don't expect them to be a dom at home. Look, I say this all the time. I truly believe everyone has the ability to play and enjoy both sides of power dynamics. However, because professional doms spend a huge amount of time in their dominant at work, it's not really where I want to be in my personal life. Don't get me wrong, me and my partner will play around with power dynamics ourselves at times, but I don't want to come home and have to be in that dominant state principally. I love what I do and I'm so passionate about it, but I can't spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in my pro-dom state. Like, you would just have no energy left. So I think that can be a big misconception when people go into dating a professional dominatrix. It's like, oh, cool, I guess like free pro-dom at home. It's not like that. Number 7, you will need to own your own shit. So people in kink are pretty self-aware. People in kink generally do a lot of self-work, and this is definitely the case if you are a pro-dom. You need to be doing a lot of self-work if you are doing this job. I have my own therapist that I see very regularly. So if my partner can't handle their own shit, I sure as hell am not. So definitely you're going to have to learn to own your shit. Number 8, you need to trust your partner and not have jealousy issues. So if you are someone that sits at home and lets their imagination run wild, maybe choose a different type of partner, because you really need to trust the boundaries and rules that you have agreed upon, and understand the line between professional and personal. Because otherwise, again, you are really going to struggle. If you're going to sit there while they're sessioning and like going in your head and thinking like, oh, are they doing this? Are they doing that? Are they feeling this? Are they feeling that? You are going to run yourself crazy and you're just going to explode one day. Number 9, I think this actually really came from my partner, actually, like how I feel from him. You need to look at what your partner does with pride. While I personally find it hard to believe sometimes because I live in my own little bubble now of really open-minded and kink-friendly people, there is still a lot of judgment from society in what I do. And my partner has never made me feel any of that, not even to the tiniest degree. He has always said how proud he is of the work I do and the message I'm sending out, especially because I am so public about what I do and who I am. So, look, some people keep this part of their lifestyle a secret, and that's fine. But if you are dating a pro dom, you need to accept that there's a possibility that it could come out. And you will end up being so nervous, worrying about people finding out, and you will be wasting so much energy on worrying what happens when it comes out that you're just going to start to resent your partner. So I think if you are going to date a pro dom, you need to go into it thinking that if this came out tomorrow, I would be cool with it. Because if you're not, again, I think choose a different partner. Number 10, final one, is you will need to be able to hold space for your partner. I think I mentioned this before. When I talk about what I do now, it really is, I hold space for people. I hold space for people to be their authentic selves. I hold space for people to grow. I hold space for people to live their best life. Like whatever it is that they're trying to achieve in my sessions, I'm holding space for that to happen. I'm facilitating that. So what I need most when I come home is someone that can hold space for me. Because what I do, I truly believe is my purpose in this life. But I need someone who is strong enough to do it for me. So that's kind of my top 10 tips for dating a dom. And as promised, I said I would answer some of your questions I got on Insta after I announced the topic. So I'm just going to go through those now. So the first question was, what made you say, okay, he's my man, and begin a relationship with him? So I guess because we didn't just go into a relationship, we didn't like date and start a relationship. We kind of were just hooking up and having fun. I guess that happened a bit later on. It happened probably, I think, 4 months into seeing each other more and more. And it was actually over New Year's. I was up north where he was living, and we were like spending like a week together. And we were just kind of lying in bed one day, like post partying. And I brought up to him that people were now referring to me as his girlfriend. And he kind of noted, oh, that's, people are saying that to me, like similar, or that, boyfriend, girlfriend reference. And I kind of had stopped bothering to correct people. And same with him, we were just kind of letting it roll. And he was like, well, do you want to be my girlfriend? And I was like, this is so high school. I was like, I guess so. And that's kind of when we began the relationship. So I don't know if it was just a moment that was like, okay, he's my man. But in those months leading up to that, I guess he had really proven himself as to the type of lifestyle he was living. We had gone to play parties together. We had discussed and communicated like things we were comfortable with, things we weren't comfortable with. Like I'll give a really like raw example. One was like, we don't fuck friends unless we're together. Like we'd already had these discussions that showed me that he was someone who was able to have a relationship on the same type of level that I wanted to have a relationship. So I think that's what really made me click and be like, okay, this is the one. I didn't have to be a man. Just looking at this question, it could have been a woman too, but it just happened to be him. The next question was how to set boundaries between bedroom life as a dom and real life as normal spouse. Really good question. I guess it's probably a little easier for me because I'm a professional dom, as I've said. So I don't need to be a dom in the bedroom. Don't get me wrong. As I said, we can play around with power dynamics, but it's not our default state. So the boundaries for me are a little bit clearer because when I'm at work, when I'm in my studio, I step into Tash. And when I'm at home, I step into me. And I think play with your partner or your spouse or whoever is, you can step into whatever role you like. I love that about play. I can be the dominant, I can be the submissive, I can be whatever I want to be in that space. But I guess for me, it's a little bit easier to define it because it's my professional life versus my personal life. If I am going to say, when I am dominant in my personal life, how do I know the boundary between that and the dominant in my professional setting? To me, it kind of comes down to my intention. My intention to a session is quite different to my intention when I'm playing in my personal life. In a professional setting, I'm really concerned and about my client, about the submissive, that I'm facilitating a session, right? I'm facilitating for them to achieve their goals. So I'm in a bit of quite a different headspace. So that's the boundary for me is like, what's my intention? What's my headspace doing? Question 3, does your partner ever get jealous of your subs? No. Yeah, I mean, he's not a very jealous person anyway. I think it helps that we live an open relationship lifestyle. Neither of us are people who get very jealous. I very much believe in the concept of conversion, which means you get joy from your partner getting not just aroused, but fulfilled, made happy, whatever it is, by someone else. You get joy in that. So for us, it's not really much of an issue. Also, he understands it's work, and that there's a line. There's a line between my professional and personal life. So no, he doesn't get jealous. Have you ever dated a sub that saw you as a pro dom and combine? Oh, okay. Yeah, I get this. Oh, yeah. Okay. So have I ever dated a client? No, is the easy answer. Or would I? Someone actually also asked, would I ever date a client? So I'll kind of combine those answers. I have never dated a client. There is, for me, a line and a professional line, and I think that would probably cross into unethical. It'd kind of be like dating a therapist, right? It's just a line you don't cross. Also, because they know Mistress Tash Mia, they don't know who I am outside of that. So their perception of me is very altered. And so, no, I probably would never date a client, although I hate to say never. To me, it's not a line that shouldn't be crossed. Have you ever fallen for a client? I wouldn't say I have fallen like in love with a client, because obviously I've said I've never dated one. However, I definitely have clients who I've got extremely close to. I think it's only natural in this line of work, because you are working with people on such deep levels and with such intense energy, and seeing really the true, authentic sides of themselves. And that can also naturally just bring out mine. You can form very close bonds and attachments. And it is sometimes difficult to navigate. And you really need to, as I said, like that kind of therapist mentality, you really need to make sure that you have those boundaries in place, kind of like your safety rails, right? So that you don't end up crossing that line. So while, yes, I have got very close to clients, I've never fallen for a client, let's say. Last question I'll answer is, does Tash rule the home? No, I wouldn't say I rule the home. I would think we're quite equitable in the home. But to be honest, like I quite like taking a back seat sometimes. I'm so dominant in my everyday life. And that energy that sometimes, I just want someone to make a decision for me. I don't want to have to think. So definitely no, Tash doesn't always have to rule the house. So thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the first solo episode. I will be recording more, and as I said, mixing this in with some really great guests this series. And as always, stay kinky.